Okay, in this video we're going to be doing some product rule examples. In words, the product rule states that the derivative of two different functions, let's say we had two functions, we had f of x is just some function, and then we had g of x. And we had it where we wanted to multiply f of x times g of x, and that would give us some other function, maybe h of x, and we wanted to find h prime of x. And we don't necessarily know how to find the derivative of h of x, as it is the product of two separate functions. However, according to the product rule, h prime of x will be defined as the derivative of the first function, f prime of x, times the second function, g of x, plus the first function, f of x, multiplied by the derivative of the second function, g of x. So, in words, the derivative of the product of two functions is going to be the derivative of the first multiplied by the second, plus the first multiplied by the derivative of the second. So let's take a few examples. So the first example I have here should be pretty straightforward. We have where we're going to find h of x is going to be x squared times e to the x. So the first thing we need to do is we need to know what the derivative of each of these parts are. So if we let f of x be x squared and g of x be e to the x, we can have f of x equals x squared. Therefore, f prime of x, by the product rule, we know that the derivative of this will be 2x. And we know that the derivative of e to the x is just going to be e to the x, so that's going to be pretty straightforward. So we know g prime of x will be e to the x. So h prime of x is going to be the derivative of the first, which is 2x, stated over here, times the second, which is e to the x, plus the first, which is just our x squared term, multiplied by the derivative of the second, which is e to the x, because the exponential function has it where e to the x is always going to be its own derivative. As you get into integration, the integral of e to the x will always be e to the x plus some constant, but that's not until second semester, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Alright, so we could factor this out if we wanted to. We could take it where it's e to the x times 2x plus x squared. We could also pull out a x term in there. Sometimes these things, you can factor them forever, so we could have x e to the x times, let's see, we got a 2 inside and an x. So either of these will be perfectly acceptable solutions to your calculus teacher. And let's try and do one more example. So let's see. Hope we have room. This looks like it's going to be a little bit of a long one. Not too difficult. Let's see, we have 3x squared plus 5x times e to the x. So a lot of these, when we're working on them, they have a lot of these e to the x terms just to kind of make it easy and get used to the process of having to think about the first function and the second function. So we're going to define this as h of x, and if we look at it, we have this section here, and then we have this section over here. So our f of x can be 3x squared plus 5x. And if we use the product rule to find the derivative of this, let's see, we subtract 1, we bring this out in front, that's going to be 6x plus 5 with the power rule there, and that's going to give our f prime of x. And then we know that g of x is going to be equal to e of x over here, and we know that g prime of x is going to be equal to e to the x because the derivative of e to the x is going to be itself. There's a proof that we could show in a later video on that, but that will be on the scope of most calculus classes. Alright, so if we plug these in, we know the derivative of the first is going to be our f prime term. So we got h prime of x is going to be equal to, let's see, 6x plus 5. So that's the derivative of the first times the second, which is e to the x, plus the first, which is going to be just the first term we had here, or 3x squared plus 5x, times the second, which is e to the x. We can factor this whole thing, so I'm pulling out the e to the x, and we can, let's see, 6x plus 5 plus 3x squared plus 5x. Let's see if we can clean that up, combine like terms, and we're going to get, let's see, I think it's going to be e to the x times, let's see, 3x squared plus 11x plus 5. Alright, and that's our final answer there of h prime for that example. Alright, these problems can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes a lot of steps I find it helpful to sometimes when you're taking a test. Make a little box to the side with all the information that you need. Try and keep things organized and get into a habit of doing them. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on these things, and as always, thanks for watching.